Gate 7 flagged the child before she had finished sliding her card into the slot. The yellow laminate rectangle, the same card every human refugee carried out of the Merit Transit Authority's processing office, printed in 2 languages, photographed, thumb-stamped, and certified at issuance, had barely cleared the reader's lip before the machine emitted a sound that Calla Oren had not heard before in 11 weeks of working the transit queue. Not the standard rejection tone, which was a short descending note like a dropped coin. Not the approval chime. Something between the two. A sustained, uncertain hum, as though the gate were genuinely confused and had decided to express that confusion out loud. The child looked up at the machine without alarm. She was 9 years old, according to the card, and she had the particular calm of someone who had spent a significant portion of those 9 years waiting in lines, and had concluded that waiting in lines was simply a thing that happened to a person, like weather. The gate status panel shifted from green to amber. Calla stepped out of position in the queue. She was 33rd, with the yellow card tucked into the front pocket of her field jacket, and moved to the counter beside Gate 7, where the Transit Authority's liaison officer, a Velhari male named 7-Ot, was already frowning at his own display. "What is it flagging?" she asked. 7-Ot's frown deepened. He had a way of frowning that involved his entire upper body, a full forward lean, as though the problem on the screen might become clearer if he got closer to it. Impossible sequence. The medical history reads as temporally inverted. What does that mean? It means, he scrolled through the flag report, then stopped. It means the machine believes this child's health record runs backward. The child, who had been watching the amber panel with mild scientific interest, glanced over at Calla. Is it going to be a long wait? I'm not sure yet, Calla said. What's your name? Maya. Okay, Maya, just stand tight for a moment. 7-Ot was reading aloud from the report, more to himself than to either of them. Inoculation series, complete. Pathogen exposure, 0 recorded instances. Symptom history, 0 recorded instances. He paused. Complication rate, 0. Recovery events, 0. Another pause longer. The machine is reading this as a sequence that trends consistently downward toward 0, which implies, under standard medical record interpretation protocols, that the subject began healthy and became progressively less healthy over time. But there are no recovery events, so the machine cannot identify the point at which the deterioration reversed. It has concluded the record is impossible. Calla considered this for a moment. She's never been sick, she said. That is not a recognized medical trajectory. For a human child who never got sick, it is. 7-Ot looked at Maya, then back at his display, with the expression of a person who has just been told a fact that their entire professional training has not equipped them to process. The gate requires a corrected record. The record isn't wrong, she's just never been sick. A corrected record, he repeated, carefully, showing the normal illness and recovery progression for a developing juvenile organism. I can't give you a record showing something that didn't happen. The amber light on the gate panel pulsed once, slowly, like a slow blink. A second machine, the verification unit mounted above Gate 7's display, whirred to life and requested the card be resubmitted. Maya, who had been watching all of this with the same scientific patience, took the card when 7-Ot slid it back to her and fed it into the slot again. The hum returned, lower this time. A third panel joined the display, red. 7-Ot looked at Calla. Calla looked at 7-Ot. Maya looked at them both, then at the red panel, and then produced a small square of folded paper from her jacket pocket and began folding it into something else, as though the ambient wait time were a resource to be used. It has reclassified her, 7-Ot said, reading from the new flag. Biological subject category 0 progression, meaning a record that demonstrates no change in health state over the documented period. Which is accurate, Kala said. Category 0 is reserved for inorganic entities. Kala looked at Maya. Maya, who was folding the paper into what appeared to be a bird, was clearly organic. The category is wrong. The category is what the gate assigned. Then the gate is wrong. 7-Ot appeared to agree with this assessment, but had no professional mechanism for expressing it. The supervisor arrived from the administration office at the end of the transit hall, which was a walk of approximately 40 meters. The supervisor's name was Brentha Vi, and she was also Velhari, and she had the air of a person who had dealt with many unusual situations in her career and had developed a methodology for approaching them that began with total skepticism and ended, sometimes, with reluctant acceptance. She read the gate's report. She read it twice. She asked 7-Ot 3 questions in rapid succession. She looked at Maya, who had by now completed the paper bird and was holding it lightly by one wing. "This is a child," Brentha Vi said. "Yes," Kala said. "A human child." "Yes." "Who has never been sick." "Correct." Brentha Vi looked back at the report. She had the posture of a person who would very much like to send this problem to someone above her in the hierarchy, but who understood that no one above her in the hierarchy was currently available. The gate cannot process a record that reads as temporally inverted. The verification unit reads human medical histories from most recent event to earliest event, which is the standard for all species registered in the Transit Authority database. When it reads a human child's history from most recent to earliest, it expects to see a progression from recovery to illness, because that is what a standard record looks like when read in that direction. If no illnesses are present, the record appears to show only a flat line of perfect health extending backward through time, which the system interprets as an impossibility, because no juvenile organism has a flat health line. "Unless it was never sick," Kala said. "Unless it was," Brentha Vi stopped. "That is technically possible. She's standing right in front of you. But the gate cannot verify it." "What would the gate need to verify it?" Brentha Vi pulled up a secondary screen. She navigated through 4 menus and 3 confirmation panels before arriving at a sub-protocol that Kala suspected had not been accessed in some time, based on the way the supervisor's fingers slowed as though she were reading each option carefully to make sure she was not about to do something catastrophic. She found what she was looking for. She read it. She read it again. "There is a provision," Brentha Vi said slowly, "for species that present atypical biological documentation, where the documentation cannot be corrected to match system standards without falsifying the record. The provision allows for the issuance of a species-specific exemption notation." She looked up. "It is designed for species whose biological processes do not conform to Transit Authority database norms." "That sounds like exactly what this is." "The notation would need to be printed and attached to the card." "Then print it." Brentha Vi looked at Maya. Maya held up the paper bird. The supervisor watched her for a moment, then looked at the report again, as though verifying that it still said what it had said the last 2 times. Then she looked at Kala. "How long has she been healthy?" 9 years, Maya said. "Since I was born, I think. My mum says I never even had a runny nose as a baby. She says it was suspicious." Brentha Vi appeared to be doing a brief internal calculation. "The notation requires authorization from the Medical Verification Office. That is a separate department. The authorization will take," she checked a secondary panel, "40 minutes." Kala looked at the queue behind her. It had not grown shorter. "Is there a faster process?" she asked. "Not for a Category 0 reclassification." "Can the gate unreclassify her?" "Only if the Medical Verification Office confirms the original classification was in error." "In 40 minutes." "In 40 minutes." Kala thought for a moment. "Is there a provisional option? something that allows the subject to pass while the verification processes. Brentha Vai's expression indicated that she found this question marginally more tractable than the previous ones. She returned to her screen, navigated 3 more menus, and located a second sub-protocol that she read with the same careful attention. "There is a provisional clearance option," she said, "under the atypical biological documentation provision. It allows passage pending authorization." "That works." Brentha Vai printed the notation. The notation was a small rectangle of pale green card, approximately half the size of the yellow vaccination record, with a column of Velhari text printed on one side and the transit authority seal on the other. It clipped to the top of the yellow card with a wire fastener from the small tray on the counter. Brentha Vai ran both cards through Gate 7's reader together. The gate hummed for 3 seconds. The red panel went amber. The amber panel held for 1 more second and then went green. Maya walked through. She turned back long enough to look at Kala and hold up the paper bird. Kala gave her a nod. Maya tucked both cards and the bird into her jacket pocket and went to find her mother on the other side of the hall, who had been watching the entire proceeding from beyond the gate frame with the controlled expression of a person exercising enormous restraint. Kala returned to position 33 in the queue. The queue moved forward 2 places, then 3, then stopped because Gate 4 had begun emitting the same sustained, uncertain hum. Kala did not leave her position this time. She watched from 33 as 7-Ot hurried to Gate 4, watched as a second supervisor appeared from the administration corridor, watched the familiar sequence unfold. Flag report, explanation, secondary menu, sub-protocol, provisional notation, pale green card, wire fastener, green light. The person at Gate 4, a man in his 30s with the look of someone who had spent those years in reasonable health, walked through. The queue moved forward again. Gate 9 joined the chorus 2 minutes later. Then Gate 2. Then, in a development that seemed to genuinely surprise even Brentha Vai, who had returned to her station with the resigned competence of someone who had stopped being surprised by individual events and was now bracing herself for the shape of the afternoon, Gate 12. 4 simultaneous amber lights. 4 supervisors running the same sequence in parallel. The single authorization printer at the back of the hall clattered with a kind of determined enthusiasm, as though it had waited its entire operational life for a problem it could finally address by running without pause. Kala counted 31 people ahead of her in the queue. She calculated, roughly, how many of them might also carry a health record that read as a flat line of 0 events extending backward through time. She had no reliable basis for the estimate. She had grown up with a mother who was a nurse, a grandmother who was a physician, and a general family inclination towards sensible preventive care, the kind of household where preventive care was a standing habit. She could not recall the last entry on her own card. She reached the front of the queue. Gate 7 accepted her card. The hum began almost immediately, low and uncertain, and the panel shifted from green to amber. Kala reached into the other front pocket of her field jacket, not the one holding the yellow card, and produced a small rectangle of pale green she had lifted from Brentha Vai's printer tray 20 minutes earlier, while the supervisor's attention was directed toward Gate 4 and the growing row of amber lights. She had also collected a wire fastener from the small tray on the counter. The tray had been full at the start of the morning. She clipped the green card to the top of the yellow one and ran both through the reader. Green. She walked through. On the other side of the gate, she turned and looked back at the transit hall through the frame. 30 humans remained in the queue, each one holding a yellow card, and at least a dozen of them had already begun turning toward each other with looks that said they had heard the same hum from 3 different gates and had drawn their own conclusions. Brentha Vai stood at her station with green notation cards fanned across the counter in front of her like a hand of playing cards she had not chosen, but intended to play regardless. The printer clattered at the back of the hall, steady and unhurried. The gates, one after another, turned amber and then green. 7-Ot appeared at the counter nearest Kala's gate and looked at her through the frame. Not the frown from earlier. Something slower, more deliberate, a look that had been working toward its final form since Gate 7's first uncertain hum and had now arrived, fully assembled, as the specific expression of a man confronting the distance between what a system was designed to handle and what a situation actually required. "How many of your people," he said, "have simply never been sick?" Kala thought about it honestly. "More than you would expect," she said. "Fewer than you are thinking right now." He considered this. He did not appear reassured. He looked at the tray of wire fasteners on the counter, which was noticeably lighter than it had been that morning. He looked back at her. "We will need to reprint the exemption form," he said, "in quantity." "That would help," Kala said. "You might also want to look at the red direction on your medical history parser." "The system standard is backward for humans," she said. "We record oldest entry first, newest last. Your system reads newest first. Every human health record in your database looks like it runs in reverse." 7-Ot was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Every record." "Everyone." He looked at the transit hall. The gates were still turning. Amber green, amber green. 30 humans, several already holding the pale green notation cards they had collected from supervisors who were now distributing them from a growing stack, moving through the gates in a steady, unhurried stream. "We have," 7-Ot said carefully, 12,000 human refugee records in the Transit Authority database. Kala nodded. His expression settled, finally, into the thing it had been forming all afternoon. The resignation of a man who has discovered that a problem he believed was small and singular is, in fact, the surface of something considerably larger. "I will speak to the system's administrator," he said. "That sounds like the right call," Kala said. She adjusted her jacket, picked up her transit bag, and walked toward the far end of the processing hall, where a long window let in the afternoon light and a row of benches held people who had already passed through, including Maya, who was sitting with her mother and had produced a second square of paper from somewhere and was well into folding it into something new.